Here we are.
Here we are. It wasn't as hard as we thought it's going to be. That's what I have to say.
No, it worked.
Yes, yes. Success. We are off to a great start.
Yep, indeed. Happy solstice.
Yes, for sure. So would you like to introduce yourself? Because that's how all the guests start. So you can say whatever you want about yourself. It's all, the live is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Um, my name is Jeff Stookey. I'm a 72-year-old cisgender gay male. I live in Portland, Oregon, which is in the Pacific Northwest of the USA. I've written a trilogy of novels called Medicine for the Blues, which is set in 1923, during the time that the Ku Klux Klan was becoming very powerful, both socially and politically. And there were other movements going on at the time, including a very powerful eugenics movement, which was passing human sterilization laws to try to prevent what they considered undesirable people from reproducing, which would have been people who were feeble-minded, which they thought was hereditary, sexual deviants, moral degenerates. So there was a lot going on in the 1920s, besides prohibition and the women getting the right to vote, and there was a lot going on during that period. So it was an interesting time to research.
Okay, so before we get in the books, which I have many questions, I would like you to inform us how it was growing up, because I don't know when you came out, but like if you knew from a very early age, or it was something that was later on in life for you, but how was the community growing up?
I grew up in a very small town in rural Washington state. I certainly didn't have words when I was a child for some of the feelings that I was having. I remember being sort of getting kind of fluttery feelings when I was around certain handsome older men when I was a kid. But I didn't know what all that was about. But I knew from a very early age that I was attracted to men. I didn't. So also living in a small town
didn't help.
It was, well, there were so many things that we didn't have. For example, we only got popular songs on the radio for 1 hour in the afternoon, which we would, eat up vigorously, because that was the only popular songs that we got. The rest was cattle market reports, agricultural news, Western music. So, and then also I had relatives in larger cities like Wenatchee, which is in central Washington state. My grandparents lived on the coast in Olympia, and we would go to bigger cities from time to time. And I knew I wanted to live in a larger community from the time I was young. It wasn't until I went to college that I started to come out. And even then, which was in the late 60s and early 70s, of course, there was a lot going on politically right then, but it wasn't comfortable being out to everybody. Maybe to a few friends was how it worked in college for me. And then later on, I moved, after I graduated from college, I moved to Seattle and started going to gay bars and being more public in my gay presentation.
How, I mean, I don't know if you came out to your family and your friends, well, your friends for sure, but how did they take that in? Because I'm sure it's not, I mean, you hear stories of families not being able to take it in at this time and age that we live. That is 2021, and things, you know, it's not how it was like years back. But did you come out to your family? Like, were the friends that didn't accept it?
Let's see, coming out to my family it wouldn't have been until I was in college that I came out to my family. I remember mentioning to my mother that I had homosexual feelings, but in the end, I don't think it was a surprise to them. I had been a cheerleader in high school, which was very unusual for a boy. I was the first male cheerleader in my junior high and high school. I don't know how I managed that at the time, but I was fairly popular amongst my friends in junior high and high school. But eventually, I think my parents realized that the friends I was bringing home for them to meet were men, and eventually they got the idea. When my partner Ken and I, he had a sailboat, and we sailed across the Puget Sound to visit my parents, who were living then on the Olympic Peninsula, and my dad came down to have coffee with us in the boat, and I had gone up to the marina to shower, and Ken was talking to my dad, and my dad was saying, we hadn't made the bed yet, and Dad asked Ken, well, where does Jeff sleep? And Ken said, well, right here. And he said, well, where do you sleep? And Ken said, right here. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. So that was one way of coming out.
So it wasn't like a big, yeah, as you said, it wasn't like so much of a shock, because especially in that time, like the stories that we hear is like really bad. So I'm guessing you were kind of lucky in that perspective.
Yes, my parents weren't, they didn't, it wasn't a big shock, or they forbid me to visit or kick me out of the house. Of course, I wasn't living at home anymore by then, but no, there wasn't that kind of a big schism in the family.
Yes, that's really good. Did you have someone from your environment that you got like a negative feedback? Let's say that you actually, when you came out, you got disappointed, maybe.
Say, ask that again.
Yeah, so if you maybe told someone from your environment, whether it was friends, because I've heard stories that it's usually friends, that when you come out, you know, maybe they're like, they don't want to hang out with you anymore, or they, you know, they didn't expect it, and then, you know, they don't want to hang out, as I said, or because you said that your family was supportive. Did you get the same from your friends?
Yes, for the most part. I don't remember friends rejecting me because of being gay. Of course, I was careful who I was coming out to, but I do remember going to a 20th class reunion in Okanagan, where I grew up, the small town. I'd been living in Seattle, and an old friend from Okanagan encouraged me to go to the reunion, so I did. And I did get the feeling there that some of the classmates that I'd known, you know, years before were really standoffish. Just if I said hi, or if we happened to be, you know, in the same part of the room, for example. So I did experience some of that. And as a matter of fact, some of those experiences and feelings I was able to use when I was writing the book.
Mm-hmm. About the books, well, first of all, when did you start writing the books? Or in general, when did you start writing? Like, is it a hobby that, you know, you started from a very early age and then you decided to become an author? Like, how did the whole journey begin?
Right. When I was a child, I really was fascinated with art and drawing and painting. I had a great uncle who came to visit, Uncle Oscar, when I was very young. And I remember him drawing a picture of me as a child. And I was absolutely fascinated by how, as he moved the pencil across the piece of paper, my face appeared. And so that really impressed me. And so I spent a lot of time drawing and painting when I was a kid. And then when I was in school, besides assignments where they were asked to draw a picture or something like that, they started assigning us to write stories. And I really enjoyed that. And so when later on in junior high, I remember taking a class that was supposed to help us figure out career paths. And one of the suggestions I got from my reading was that if you were interested in art and in writing or literature, that theater and movies were a good path to take. And I was really fascinated by movies back then, of course. And so I became really obsessed with movies and filmmaking from the time I was in, junior high. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to college, that's what I was focusing on. I had written quite a few stories when I was in junior high and high school, but I didn't do any writing, except for assignments and term papers and that sort of thing in college. Mm-hmm. But I didn't turn to writing until much later on because I was so interested in filmmaking. And I did make a number of short films. Matter of fact, there's a blog that I have on my website. If you look for under the blog tab, the one that says movies, books, and the great conversation, I have a link there to one of my films, a Vimeo link. But I finished that film in 1986. And then sometime later, I read The Color Purple, the book by Alice Walker, which I really loved. And then short time later, they made a movie of it. Steven Spielberg made a film of it. And I was terribly disappointed in the movie. It left out so much. And so
it's always the way.
Well, some movies really do it, but
yes,
that one didn't. And so I started thinking about writing as a way to get deeper and get more stuff out there. So I decided I would, instead of, also too, writing is so much easier than making films. Filmmaking is so cumbersome. And with writing, all you need is a pencil and paper. And so I decided to sit down and do some writing. And this was after I had turned 50. And I decided, okay, I've lived this long. I've had a number of experiences. I ought to have something to say. And so I was going to write memoir, or I was going to write, I also was thinking about writing about a very good friend of mine, Jesse Stephen Bernstein, who was a Seattle poet and writer who has sort of a cult following. He committed suicide in 1991. I was thinking about writing about my friendship with him. And all of us, well, it was kind of suddenly this image dropped into my lap. It just sort of appeared to me of two men necking in a 1920s automobile. And I had the feeling that there was a gun under the front seat of the car. And that image really fascinated me. And I started wondering, okay, who are these guys? What's their background? How did they meet? And I just kept pushing on those questions and exploring it. And the story just slowly unfolded. At the time, I was living in a house that was built in 1920 here in Portland.
Okay.
And my mother was born in 1920. And I've always been sort of fascinated with the 20s. Of course, there was F. Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway and John Dos Passos and jazz and the Prohibition. Just the whole mystique of the 20s always really fascinated me. So I started doing a lot of research into the 20s because since I saw that was where this story was going to unfold. And the more I learned, the more I was fascinated with, well, things like the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the 20s. A friend of mine named Michael Novi wrote an article for the Oregon State Bar Bulletin about a case called the Oregon School Law in 1922, which was pushed by the Ku Klux Klan. And what it did was it made it mandatory for students between the ages of 8 and 16 were required to go to public schools. Now, which sounds very reasonable. And
Yes.
or who doesn't want kids to get educated?
Exactly.
But their idea, at the time, and even still, Oregon is a very white state. There are very few African Americans in the state, and the Constitution from 1853 or so forbade blacks to move into the state. And when the Ku Klux Klan started becoming really influential in the early 1920s, because there weren't many blacks, the issue that they latched onto was anti-Catholicism. And so this new school law would have prevented people from going to Catholic and other parochial schools, which was their goal. They were pushing conspiracy theories back then that the Pope was trying to take over the United States, and the Catholic Church was
I didn't know that.
this big threat to everybody. But you have to realize that the population of Oregon has long been predominantly white and Protestant and Northern European. So that's part of what was going on there with that. So this article sort of got me to thinking about this history with the Klan in the 1920s. And so I realized that had to be part of the story. And so I did a lot of research into that aspect of the history of Oregon. There was a great book I ran across, which is called Women of the Klan by Kathleen Blee. And she was writing primarily about Indiana, but this was largely true across the United States, that there was a robust involvement of women in the Klan as well. It wasn't just men. And their role was, because they did most of the household shopping and buying, they could boycott any businesses that weren't Klan members. And so that had a big effect in terms of what businesses were able to thrive back in the 20s. And it did put some like Catholic businesses or Jewish businesses or German businesses out of business. A lot of antipathy towards Germans back then because we just come out of World War I.
So they were like spies, let's say, the women.
Well, yeah, you might say that. They were just, they would have these whispering campaigns about, oh, well, you shouldn't shop at such and such a place because they're not in with the Klan. Yeah.
So your books, I mean, from the research I've done, it's not, so each book is not like a separate story, it's a sequel of books. So it's a the one, I don't, do you want to like give us like a little, don't spoil anything, but yes, but yes, like give us like a bit of the story, let's say.
Okay, it begins in Portland, Oregon in 1923 at a wedding reception. And the main character, the first person narrator, is Dr. Carl Holman. Mm-hmm. He is a World War I veteran, and he's come back to Portland. During the war, this is all backstory, he had an affair with another American officer while they were stationed in Germany during the occupation after the armistice of World War I. And then he came back to the United States and settled in Portland and started working for a prestigious clinic. And he goes to this wedding reception because his colleagues have sort of insisted, because they're involved with some of the people at the wedding. And at the wedding, Jimmy Harper is playing the piano at this wedding reception. And he's an attractive young man who catches Carl Holman's eye, and that's where they meet. And so the first book, which is Acquaintance, is about how their friendship develops and how their relationship blossoms. And then the second book, which is Chicago Blues, follows Jimmy Harper when he goes to Chicago, because he has ambitions to become a famous jazz musician, and he's with a jazz band called the Diggs Monroe Jazz Orchestra. So they go to Chicago to seeking fame and fortune, and that is the story of book 2. And then book 3, Carl Holman is still back in Oregon, and he's having all kinds of stresses and strains in his work environment with the clinic and with the other doctors that he is working with. And there are rumors that he's a sexual deviant, and he has to deal with those rumors, as well as a lot of difficult medical issues that sort of come to him in his office, and how he's going to work out his life and carry on his career and his relationships intimately and with other friends. So that's basically the arc of the story, without giving too much away.
Don't give too much, because I want to buy the books and I want to read it. So, so don't say anymore. What were the struggles of? Katerina says, could we find the books in the UK? I think I found them on Amazon when I was doing my research.
Yeah, they are available on Amazon, but if you go to my website, which is jeffstookey.com, there are suggestions there where you can order from some local bookshops if you want to if you don't want to order from Amazon. You could also just go to your local bookstore and ask them to order the book, because it's available from Ingram Spark, which is an independent publisher who I've hooked up with, and they're distributing the books. So that's, you could just go to any bookstore and ask for the books. I think they ought to be able to order them.
Okay, I didn't know that. There you go. We learned something. What was the struggles of publishing the books? Did you have, because obviously it's a gay-friendly book, so where did you have any difficulties with publishing a book as such?
There's a big literary conference every year in Portland called Willamette Writers Conference. It's a local organization, and they put on this big wingding every August, and they invite publishers and writers and writing instructors. It's quite a deal. And I went to that. I've been there a number of different years, but that particular year when I was finishing up the books, I pitched the books to a number of literary agents. They have a whole program where you can sit down with agents and tell them about your work. And there were 6 different agents that I spoke with, and they all expressed some interest in the trilogy. So I sent them samples of the books, and no one ever responded. So this around the time of the 2016 presidential campaigns, when Donald Trump was running for the presidency, I started to see so many parallels between what I had written about the 1920s and the issues that were at play in our political dialogue during that presidential season, campaign season. And so I knew it would take a long time to find an agent and a publisher. So I decided I would go ahead and self-publish the books. And I asked around some friends, and I was referred to my editor, Jill Kelly, who had done some self-publishing herself. So she was able to guide me through the self-publishing process once we had gone through the process of editing the books. But I knew that in terms of self-editing, you needed to have an editor, just the same way you would if you went with a regular publisher, established publishing house. They would have you go through the editing process with an editor and clean up the text and fix things that didn't seem right and that sort of thing. So I went with that, and Jill also referred me to a book designer who came up with these lovely covers, which you can see up here behind me. She designed the exterior and the interior of the book, and I went with things from there and self-published.
I wanted to ask you about the pictures that you have, like as we can see behind you, that you have on your covers. How did you, like, where did you find the pictures? How did you find, was it really a long process with all the research you had to do? Because as you said, you have to see the political aspect in that time. You have to see so many, like only thinking about it, there's so much research that you have to do. How did you manage, like, where did you find from people that can obviously give you stories? Did you find stories from maybe books from a library? Where did you manage to gather everything together in order to write these books?
I did a lot of research. I knew I had to figure out what it was like to be gay in the 1920s. And around the time I started writing this in 1998,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the first books I ran across was a book called The Other Side of Silence
Mm-hmm.
by John Lawfrey. And that is the subtitle is Men's Lives and Gay Identities in 20th Century History.
Mm-hmm.
And he does cover a little bit of the 20th century, but not a lot. And so I started casting around, and I was able to contact some gay historians here in Portland who were at the time starting up an organization called GLAPN, the Gay and Lesbian Archive of the Pacific Northwest. And you can find they have a wonderful website called, that's glapn.com, Gay and Lesbian Archive of the Pacific Northwest. And there are links to them on my website, if you visit my website under the resources tab. But that organization was just starting up at the time, and I got to know two historians, George Painter and Tom Cook. And George Painter was writing a book at the time about a 1912 sex scandal in Portland, which involved a number of professional men, a number of working class men, and led to a number of really high profile trials for sodomy. So that was some of the history that I started to learn about from George Painter. He subsequently finished his book. And then Tom Cook was another historian, and he was from Chicago, and so he knew about some of the Chicago history, gay history in Chicago. I did some research through the Chicago Historical Society. They sent me some documents that were helpful. I read a number of books. I started collecting novels from the 1920s that dealt with homosexuality. One of my favorite ones is Bertram Cope's Year by Henry Blake Fuller, which was published in 1919. So it was really quite groundbreaking at the time, but it gave a picture of what it was like to be gay in the 1920s. Another really important book that came out around that time was this book called Jeb and Dash, which is this man's diaries. It's a diary of gay life, 1918 to 1945, edited by Ina Russell. I have a lot of these books listed on my resource tab on my website if you want to look up any of these books. But this is a really fascinating book because it's a diary of this young man who's living in Washington, D.C., and his coming out as gay, or realizing that he's gay, and making gay friendships back in, well, starting in 1919. So I learned a lot about what that was like through his diaries. So there was a lot of research, and there was a lot of during the time that I was writing, and I worked on this book for 20 years. So during that time, a lot of new gay history was coming out. And one of the best books was this, Samesex Affairs by Peter Bogue. And he writes specifically about Portland and the Pacific Northwest in that early period from 1915. Well, he covers the this gay sex scandal in 1912. But that book was really instrumental in finishing the book, because he talks about how the different social levels interacted, slang that they used. For example, in, say, agricultural work and logging and that sort of blue-collar work, um, there were a lot of transient men moving around in the West at that time, going, say, from job to job. And one of the social things that developed was an older man would befriend a younger man and be sort of a mentor and a guide for him. And the older man was termed a jocker, and the younger man was called a punk. Another phraseology, some other phraseology I learned later is Gonzal Kid was what they would call the younger man or the punk. And John Ciardi is a famous poet in the United States who used to do these little snippets on National Public Radio about the history of language. And he talked about the history of the term Gonzal Kid. And then just recently, I've been reading Dashiell Hammett, the mystery writer from the 1920s and 30s. And he, in The Maltese Falcon, he uses the term Gunzel to refer to a young man who is befriended by an older influential man. And it sort of snuck by the editors because they thought that it had something to do with guns, because there was a lot of gunplay, of course, in these detective stories. But really what he meant was that this guy might be a homosexual partner to this older man. And then there was also in urban and urban settings, there was another homosexual type, which was the fairy or the queen, which was a homosexual or a very effeminate man. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of dress codes and grooming things that they did as indications that they were gay. One of the codes was to wear a red tie. Another one was some of the fairies would pluck their eyebrows or wear makeup, mm-hmm. Lipstick, that sort of thing. And so I incorporated some of that historical lore in the books. So the history was just fascinating, and the more I read, the more I learned. There's another kind of aspect to the growth of the awareness of homosexuality. In the early part of the 20th century, a lot of people just either didn't know about it, didn't acknowledge it, didn't want to think about it. And so a lot of stuff in the early days flew under the radar. Mm-hmm. But as Sigmund Freud started writing about these sorts of things, and Freud became very popular in the 1920s, and then with sodomy trials and that sort of thing, homosexuality became more known throughout the general public, and so it was harder for men to I don't know, it had to, their lives had to become more coded and more discreet. And what I found studying this history was that in World War II, psychiatry had really started to look at homosexuality as an illness. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the men who went to war in World War II were either found out and sent to mental hospitals or camps where they kind of sequestered them from the rest of the fighting population. Mm-hmm. And by the 1950s, homosexuality had become seen as real pariahs. And then at the same time, there was the Joseph McCarthy communist scare, the Red Scare, and then at the same time, there was what was called the Lavender Scare, and there have been a number of books that have come out about that period in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized was that in the 1950s, when I was growing up, was about the most dangerous time for homosexuals in the United States because it had become so pathologized. And then, of course, it wasn't until the 1960s and 70s that the whole gay rights movement, Stonewall and subsequent gay rights activism really took off and started changing the laws and the way that people viewed homosexuality.
I actually wanted to ask you about Stonewall. Is that something that you would write, like in another book, maybe later on? Because the books you are writing, obviously, it's at the 1920s, as you said, which is it's before Stonewall happened. Is that something that you would write maybe in the future?
I don't think so. You know, I was not aware of Stonewall when it happened. I was in college at the time, and I guess well, it didn't get into the mainstream news, obviously, but my partner, Ken, who was in the military at the time, he was taking had a subscription to the Village Voice, which came out of New York, and they reported quite a bit on the Stonewall uprising, and so he knew about it back then. He said he was subscribing to the Village Voice as his link to the gay community back then, since he was in the military. But there's been a lot written about Stonewall since it happened. I'm still hearing about novels and other writing that's coming out about Stonewall, so I don't think I have much that I can add to it.
Would you like to write more books in the future? Because I don't know because this is a trilogy. At the third book, the story ends, correct?
Right.
Would you write maybe another trilogy, or maybe just a novel, or maybe something from your life? Because as you said, when you started writing, you were thinking of writing things from your life. Like, what are your plans in that department for the future?
I have had some ideas that are kind of circling around in the back of my head that I've thought about writing for a long time. And after I published the books, I got to know J.D. Chandler, who was a local crime writer. He died recently, suddenly, from a heart attack, tragically. But he's a great historian here in Portland. And he has written about a number of crimes from Portland's past. And there's one unsolved murder of by poisoning, and he suggested, and he sent me a number of news articles about it, that I should have Jimmy and Carl solve the mystery, because it happened at a radio station where they had, you know, radio shows and music and that sort of thing, and he thought that Jimmy might be playing music at the radio station and get involved with this murder mystery. So that's still kind of mulling around in the back of my head. And that's part of the reason I've been reading Dashiell Hammett and some of these early mystery writers lately. Another thing I've thought of writing is about my childhood. And I've done a little bit of writing in that area. I don't know what, I'll have to wait and see what comes of it. The other idea that I had in the back of my mind really for a very long time was, what was it like for Native Americans who were taken back to Europe to the royal courts in the 1500s and the 1600s, because there are old paintings of those events, and that really did happen. They brought Native Americans from the early, what was then the colony of Virginia, back to the court in England. And so I've always wondered, from their perspective, what was that like for them to be taken from their very close to nature milieu to this very strange society in England, with Queen Elizabeth and Shakespeare and Sir Walter Raleigh. So I've done a certain amount of research in that area, and I've written some blogs about that as well, which you can also find on my website. I'm still kind of fascinated by that idea. I tried to read some Richard Hakluyt, who was a writer back in Elizabethan times. I found the language just really difficult. And it seems to me, if you're going to write about that period, you kind of have to assimilate some of that kind of writing in. I don't know. So and there's so many pitfalls in terms of historical research. That's a really challenging idea, but it's still kind of there in the back of my mind. But basically, what I've found is that I've kind of returned to a love of my original passion when I was a kid, the visual arts. And so I've been doing a little bit of drawing and painting lately, and peculiarly some cross-stitch needlework. I've been studying the paintings of Paul Klee, the German artist from the 1930s, and kind of using some inspiration from his paintings for some needlepoint work. And so that's been really rewarding for me, and I like that.
I like all these things. Like you're doing so many things. Like I feel people that I would even say at my age, which are 30 something, and the thing that's like the way they live their life is like, okay, I'm just gonna go to work, go back home, like watch Netflix all day, and then go back to sleep. Then the next day it's the same. So it just fascinates me so much that you do so many things, and you have, that urge to do all this research and that passion. And I feel you could be a role model for our generation now. Yes, it's amazing, because you could like just write books about something which is very easy, but you actually choose the hard way of doing all that research about times which you weren't even maybe born back. Like you're saying, you want to research about times like years and years back. And I don't know, I just find that amazing.
An interesting thing about that is my grandmother was born in the late 1890s. And so the time that she was getting married and starting a family was the 1920s. And I was pretty close to my grandmother. A lot of children are. And what I realized was that growing up in the 1950s, the attitudes were much closer to what they were when my grandmother was starting a family, much more so than the 70s, 80s, 90s. Society changed so much in that period. And so I kind of felt closer to the mores and the social norms of my grandmother's time, because she taught me as a child that I should walk on the outside of the sidewalk if I'm walking with a woman. So she'd be on the inside. You take your hat off when you meet people. You hold the door for a woman when you're going into a building. so, you know, a lot of those sort of Victorian manners were second nature to her, and that's what she taught me. And so a lot of what I was growing up with was really more of the earlier times. Now, younger people like you, that's a lot further back, and I think a lot of you know, a lot of our influences are very different.
For sure. But I don't know, I like anything that's as you said, like for jazz, I love those times. I feel it was more, maybe more. I know that like every generation has its difficulties. Like you're saying, I mean, you were lucky when you were growing up because you had that support. But obviously, the community wasn't the same back then for other people. So I understand, not only for that, like in general, like life is more easier because, like, you know, we have all this technology around us. And yes, everything is much easier. But at the same time, I feel back then you had maybe more of a true generation, let's say, instead of, I feel things are so easy now in 2021 that people like kind of take advantage. People will be like, okay, this relationship doesn't work, I would just go on the internet and find someone else. Like, I feel everything is, you know, there is no a true meaning in things. When, I don't know, I feel like older generations were better. But I feel, okay, at the same time, each generation has, you know, its pros and cons.
Yes, for sure.
Yes, but okay, so the last question I have for you would be, what would you like to see now? So when you were growing up, you saw how the LGBT community was. Despite the support that you had, I mean, in general, that support wasn't there, obviously, for other people. What would you like to see in the future from the community? So something that would better things, or something that, you know, you would like to see different than what it is now. Like, is there something that, you know, like maybe like an advice to the community?
Wow. I can't think about this without thinking about the current political situation. Um, I I fear that we're in a situation that's very close to the 1930s with the rise of fascism, because I see so many parallels with what's going on today and what was going on during the rise of the Nazis and Mussolini and you know, the other fascist regimes in Europe and other parts of the world, Japan. So I guess one piece of advice I would say is try to combat the conspiracy theories that are all around us these days that are so dangerous. You know, I see a parallel between what was happening in Germany with the stabbed in the back conspiracy theory that Germany lost the war because of the Jews, World War I, because of the Jews. And nowadays, there's this whole Trumpian conspiracy theory that he really won the election, which is just cuckoo. But a lot of people believe that. And a lot of people believe this stabbed in the back theory in Germany in the 1930s. Another parallel is the idea in the southern United States that the Confederacy during the American Civil War, that they weren't fighting to save slavery, that they were fighting for their noble way of life, and that slavery had nothing to do with it. And that led to the whole Jim Crow era, which was finally turned around during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. So I see a lot of parallels and a lot of perils in our contemporary society and politics, and I hope that people can wake up and I don't know, start paying attention to what's real and true, and start to see through all of the lies and the conspiracies that seem so omnipresent, especially with social media,
Yes.
making that sort of thing so omnipresent.
I feel with social media, you can't do, I mean, I guess everyone knows that it has the logic to think that you can't really know, like, it depends, even with the news, like, depends on which station you watch, you're gonna realize, like, which side they take. And it's the same with social media, like, depending where you read your news, it depends who they support. So you can't really know where the truth is. So I feel that's why it's even more confusing than maybe how it used to be. Because, you know, with so much information we're getting from social media and the internet and the news, and you just don't know what to believe at the end of the day. I feel it's really hard, even if you have the logic, because obviously you have the people that, as you say, with Trump, people are thinking that, oh, it was a whole setup. He actually did win the, you know, people won't actually think what might be behind. They would just eat what they're getting from the news. So I don't know how it's easy to actually see that truth nowadays.
Right, right. Well, read books.
Yes, for
Although,
sure. I totally agree with that.
but there are, you know, there are books written on both sides of the coin, and I guess we just need to look at both sides and see what we think is real. I think there's a lot of evidence out there where you can really find out what the truth is if you want to dig for it. I mean, what I learned about the 1920s was quite a revelation to me, and there are a lot of good historians out there and a lot of good journalists out there reporting on what's really going on today. And I think we just need to pay attention to where we're getting our information.
What you say though about books, I agree so much, because that's what I had a conversation the other day, and it was about this, because I was saying that there are things that I'm not really interested about, but I actually want to read about them just so I have that knowledge, just so I know, because, you know, so as you say, let's say for religion, that, you know, people are so passionate about their religion. When someone like truly believes, you have the people that are so passionate that, you know, they would try to get you believe what they believe, the religion that they believe, and they get so fanatic about it, but they don't know anything else about the other religions. And I feel like, you know, everyone can believe what they want to believe, but, you know, actually maybe read about all the religions, like get that information before judging and having that hate for other religions. And that goes the same with politics, the same goes for the LGBT community, that people hate on it, even though they don't truly know how it is. And I feel that goes for everything. It's the same with what you say. I would love to read about the 20s, just to know, to have, you know, just to have that information and see how it was in, you know, years back when I wasn't even alive.
Right, right. Well, and in terms of the visual arts, I think it's good to go to museums, for example, and
Yes.
look at a wide variety of different kinds of artwork. And in terms of religions, like you say, I really appreciate Islamic art. It's very different than Western art, but it's absolutely beautiful. Their architecture and the tile work and the calligraphy, you know, is really stunning. I traveled to Dubai many years ago, and I was really impressed by that culture. And you know, other cultures have great things to offer that we need to expose ourselves to. Why, Omar Khayyam invented the zero, for goodness sake. Where would we be without the zero?
No, I agree. I think that museums, traveling, and reading books, like that's the top three things, because
Yeah.
I feel it broadens like your horizons and your mind so much. And you know, just appreciate other cultures instead of being so fanatic about, you know, my country is the best and my religion is the best. You know, just, you know, see all the options before judging. And you know, you can always appreciate the good in everything. There's always some part of good in something. No reason for
Yep.
hate.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for today. I absolutely loved our live. I learned so much. I think
Good.
we could speak for hours. Like, your brain fascinates me, like all the information you have. I felt like I was like this, like I loved it so much. So thank you so much for this live.
Well, good. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your inviting me on. It's been fun.
Yes, and whoever wants to find your books, you said that they can go on your Instagram page, and I think you have your link there for your website.
To my website, right?
But you
Jeff
also said they can find it on Amazon or ask at a bookshop to order it.
Yep, yep. And there are places on the website that have links to bookstores where you can order the book if you want to. I like to stick with the small local bookstores because they need our support.
Yes,
So
oh, I
shop
love that.
your
Yes.
local bookstore.
Yes, for sure. I agree so much to support small businesses, for sure. So thank you so much for this. I hope we can maybe do another live in the future.
Maybe so. Okay.
Yes, and thanks so much. Have a lovely evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
There you are.
I'm trying to get this set up. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Also, I did not do my face, so I'm probably gonna throw a filter on.
Do whatever you want. It's fine.
Right? I was. That's cute.
Okay, if you want. Even though we don't need any filters in our life.
We don't. No, we don't. But it makes me feel more confident.
Fair enough. That's the only reason I will accept this.
I missed an earring. I just took my ADHD med.
It's like backstage, okay?
Right? It is. It's like behind.
All right, we're going on in 5 minutes. Yeah, we're going on.
Okay.
Get yourself comfy. Get yourself comfy, okay? Are you ready?
I'm almost ready. I want my notes. I want my notes. Obviously, they're written on rainbow pad.
Of course.
Of course. Naturally.
I like what you're wearing.
Thank you.
Very
Pride-esque, but also it's sweatpants, so I'm like comfortable.
I like that it's also, yes, it has that pride touch.
Yes. Had to have enough rainbow, you know.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. I was like, what should I wear? I don't have anything that's like, because I used to wear black because I don't know why.
That's me. My stuff
okay.
is black.
I was
All
like,
of it.
yes, I need to buy clothes for this month. Like,
yes. Oh, hi, Ashley.
Yes.
Love hers.
I love
right.
She's a true supporter. Like, women supporting women. That's like,
I know. It feels so good. Like our little community.
Yes. It's amazing. I'm so happy I got to meet her because I actually I saw a live you guys did, and that was, I don't know when that was. Like, it wasn't. Yeah. So I saw it and I was like, oh, I need to speak to her like at some point and stuff. And then I was thinking about it, for next month. And then I took over your account.
Yeah.
And that's like her. I was like, And she texted me. I was like, oh my God, because I actually wanted to text you. So it's
I love
amazing
that.
yes, that people can like get together, and it's amazing.
I know.
That's what it's about.
That is what it's
Yes,
all
that's what
about. Exactly.
Okay, I haven't prepared much for today because you are the queen. Your name says it all. Okay.
What can I say?
Yeah. So you're in charge. You're in charge now.
I'm in charge. Okay.
Take it away. Take it away.
So, do we want to make this like part 1 of 3, or do we want to make this like an overview?
Well, we can see how it goes.
Okay, we'll start with the first topic and see how long it takes us to actually get through it.
Yes. But
and
yeah,
then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so you're in charge. Like you need to educate us.
Okay. So let's start with mental health as a whole.
Yes.
So first of all, like, I know America's like this, but like mental health for some reason has never been equivalent to physical health. Mm-hmm. There's a complete stigma around mental health, and somehow like if you are struggling with mental health, that you're like weaker than if you were struggling with something that was physical.
Yes.
And that's like,
yeah, sorry for interrupting you, because you've told me that you were in the army. Is that something that also applies there?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I also think that like when it comes to depression and anxiety and PTSD, the military really likes to kind of sweep that under the rug. They don't really encourage dealing with it properly. My senior year of college, I wrote a paper on like PTSD and like how that affects like anxiety disorders throughout the life and like what it does to the brain. And it's really, really crazy, but now they're able to use like scientific like imaging and stuff like that to show them that like you are like suffering panic attacks and you are suffering like from this trauma that you have to deal with. And I think that that's another like they're getting better.
Let's say that it's better. I mean, I've noticed that in general. I mean, obviously, I've been in the UK not that long because I've been here 3 years. But I will tell you that, because I think we mentioned it on the previous live we did, in Greece, in general, it wasn't the way it's actually getting now. So if you were saying that I go to therapy, it was something that you, like even from your friends, it wasn't something that you would say easy. Especially to older generations. Like I could never say to my father, oh, I'm doing therapy, because obviously if you're doing therapy, there's something we did wrong, or so there's something wrong with you. Like, it's not normal.
Oh, and parents hate taking the blame for that. And I'm like, yo, it is all hereditary. Like, it didn't come from nowhere. Being gay just amplifies the mental illness. But seriously, like, mental health is hereditary, and you'll even find like people who have mental health issues, they can go up their line and tell you like my dad, my grandma, her dad, like it just it's constantly back to back. Like just how I think there's a gay gene too. I think there's
I actually wanted to ask you this today.
Yes.
Like what do you think? Is it something you're born with, or it kind of like happens
learned or later? So I totally think that it's something that's part of you, like once you're born. I don't understand, like I again can look in my family and find my queer line, you know? And right. And so while there's no scientific proof yet, because I don't think back when we were like in high school even, that doing like scientific studies about DNA and like personality traits and stuff like that, it was totally not as advanced
Yes.
as it is now. And so I'm hoping that eventually we will find like a gay gene, just how you know like your kid's gonna have blonde hair or something like that. And I understand that it's also like more of a personality trait. And right now they can't figure out personality traits based on DNA, right? That's not a thing yet. But
yeah,
I think when we have that technology, we will be able to identify like an actual gene or something that's passed down from family for sure.
is that something like for you? Is it something that like you knew from like when you were like 10 years old, let's say, or is it something
So
that
I knew when, so I was kissing girls
okay,
at like 8, but I didn't know that was like, I didn't know I was into them. You know, like I just thought it was like kissing for fun, like, you know,
yes,
make believe we're two mommies in a house. Like,
yeah, but that's the
and
thing with children. Like it's not like right or wrong. It's
right.
yeah.
It's just so it's normal and natural, and it's just coming out. Like, me and my neighbor, we were like picking flowers together and making potions, and the neighbor, another neighbor asked us what we were doing, and we were like, oh, we're playing lesbian. I was 8. Right? Like,
Oh wow, okay, all right.
yeah. So I think that I always knew I was into girls, but for the longest time I thought that I like could just be sexually attracted to girls. I wasn't sure that I could actually have like a relationship. And then I also thought that I would only be able to receive in the bedroom and that I wouldn't be able to give, until I fell for my first girl. And then obviously that went out the window, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to touch her. And I was like, okay, guess it's not just a one-way street here.
Yeah, but you get that also. Like you have the girls that, you know, only like, let's say, doing, and then you have the other side that also likes receiving. But
Pillow
obviously,
princess.
yes. Or
Yes.
you have like 50. 50.
Leave me
It's
alone,
the
actually.
filters. It's not.
Literally though, like it's just like it's your mind and anxiety before you come out like play so many tricks on you, and like especially when you're young. Like I actually like really fell for my first girl like junior senior year of high school, and this girl broke my fucking heart. Like, and after that I was just like, okay, I have the ability to fall for a woman. I was like, that was crazy. Like we had been texting for like months and months and everything was great. And then I finally like showed up to see her in like a public place. She was in a play and she was the lead. And so I like went and saw her play and brought her flowers and stuff. And she was like, thank you, but what are you doing here? I'm like, so I was like, oh, okay. She's like, okay, bye. Like took the flowers and left. Like I was a creeper.
Oh,
like,
that's
what?
so bad.
I thought I was gonna like kiss her, and I got like denied, like from even like going to say hi to her friend group. Like it was horrible.
So it just went let's say yes, it just went totally wrong. All right.
I love you, Ash. I'm running over her toes with my wheelchair.
Yeah.
Get her!
Chase her down the street. But when was like, so you have a daughter though, so you were married at some point, or
Yes.
so you were married.
I was married to a man, yeah. So I identified as bisexual through high school. When I married my ex-husband, he knew I was bisexual. That was never, that was never like a hidden fact. Yeah. My family had known that I was bi. It was like, oh, Kelsey's flirting with a girl again. Like it was not something that was like a surprise, I guess. So, then I got a divorce from my ex-husband. And while I was finishing my degree, I had my daughter at that point. She was like, I don't know, 3-4 months old. And I took this level 400 queer identities class. And it was like such an eye-opener to learn about all these different identities, and like how I was somebody who knew the binary.
Yeah.
And looking back now, it's like I was so oblivious to reality. But I learned about the Kinsey scale, and you learned that most likely between 1 being completely hetero, and I think it's like 6 or 8 being completely homo, the majority of people don't fall on the ends of the spectrum. The majority of people are somewhere in this random
In
spectrum.
between. Yes.
Right. And that in reality, we've forced our thinking into this binary. You have to be all the way gay, or like, I know for me, when I just posted about this earlier, but like when I came out, trying to date lesbians was extremely hard as like a pan girl, because lesbians are like immediately like, you're either playing with me, like you're just having fun, you're gonna break my heart, you're gonna cheat on me with a dude. Like all those were things that I had gotten. I mean, my wifey Jen and I were playing cards with my family the other day, and I was just talking about how much it sucks being bi, because you're like, or pan or poly, because it's like you're stuck not being straight enough, but you're also not queer enough to be with like the gay girls.
And a lot of the time, gay, like in general, like I've noticed that bi is like, they have like a hate towards bi people. I don't get that. Yes.
It's just like this natural dislike to women who are not completely lesbian.
Yes, but the thing is that, especially though from the community, that just makes it worse.
So much worse, right? Because as a queer person in general, you already feel like you don't fit in most of the time growing up, and you don't really know why you're different. Like I was popular, I got good grades. I mean, I was self-harming in 8th grade, so obviously I had mental health issues starting very young. But it was like, I just didn't understand like why I always knew that like binary wasn't right for me, but bi was just what fit, because that was what I knew. It was 2008, you know, like, and so in that senior course, the 400 level like queer identities class, it blew my mind when I learned about pansexuality. And the way it was explained is like gender blind, but the way I like to explain it is like, you fall for people's souls. You fall for the way that you feel when you're in their presence. You fall for that vibe, you know? Yes. It's not about what's in their pants, because I feel like if you have a fire relationship and a connection, and you guys can communicate on a deep level and have that mutual respect and love for each other, then sex is going to be great, you know? And that's another thing like that heterosexual couples often forget, is that there are so many other ways to please than inserting something into a hole.
Yes,
like,
I know, but most
even straight couples, that's not all they do. Like, why do people think that like we're flying ninjas in the air and like this is all we do? Like, that's not.
Yes.
That's not how this works. It's not how any of this works.
But that's the thing that it was this.
I'm sorry, Jen was FaceTiming me.
I didn't because I was thinking.
I denied it. But yeah, so I found pansexual, and I just was like so fitting for me. And so when I graduated, I had dated like one or two more dudes in between dating women also. And I was with one girl for like 4 months, and she was great, but she was very feminine. And to this day, like, I would consider her one of my closest friends. Like, we really did have like a great friendship and connection. And not even that the sex wasn't good. Our sex was good. It's not the point. It was just that the relationship, I found myself being turned off by her femininity.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and it was very weird for me, because I had like all the women that I'd been attracted to were like the very tomboy-esque, like, and that was another thing is like I almost thought people were trying to commit, like lesbians almost convinced me that I was just seeking attention. And so for like the longest time, it was very hard for me to realize that like, no, you are into them. It's okay. Like you're not teasing them. You're not just looking for attention. It's okay to actually be attracted to them and go after them. And I think it was like something for the longest time that I didn't recognize until I was past the bisexual stage. So I was dating her, and again, it wasn't even like she's more feminine than me or anything like that. Like, I think that I'm not super feminine, but at the same time, like, when it was like a turn off when somebody would like take longer to do their hair and makeup than me. Or if I'm in like jeans and a t-shirt and you put on a dress, I'm like,
Yes.
like, I'm kind of a tomboy and I want to be the femme one in the relationship.
Okay.
And so it took me a while to realize that that's what it is. And like, it's okay that I'm pansexual and that like masculine presenting people are what I'm most attracted to.
No, I mean, it's good that you know what and who and how and, you know, all that, like what you like. Like, I don't find anything like that. It's just that what you're saying, because I've heard so many things also of, especially like if you are super, like, you know, the femme type that you're saying. I mean, I've heard it so many times from people in Greece, like, I don't know about the USA, but like when you're like really femme and then you date a girl which is the tomboy, they try to kind of convince you that why aren't you with a guy? Like, you actually like guys.
Like, why would you be with like a masculine woman when you could just be with a guy? And I'm like, because they function completely different up here. It is not the same.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, people will always try to convince you about something totally, like, it's the thing that society does. That's what you do. Like, when you grow up, you need to be with a guy, you know, you see it everywhere. I mean, obviously, yes, things are changing now, but Kelly says, I hate that. I hear it so often. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, it sucks. But at the end of the day, oh, dang it, I got sidetracked. So Jen and I were at my parents' house. We were playing a card game.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was just talking to my mom about like the gay community and like how I don't fit in with like the gay people. I don't fit in with like the straight people. And Jen was like, yeah, I straight up almost didn't talk to you because you weren't lesbian. And my mom was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, it's a fucking thing. Like, you wonder, like, bisexuals, pansexuals, polysexuals were known to have more mental health issues and more like anxiety issues, and known to be like more withdrawn because we are like in this limbo that society doesn't recognize. And it like makes you feel like you constantly you don't fit in anywhere, you know?
Yeah, you don't get that acceptance.
Yeah. And I think that like owning my pansexuality and like really being comfortable with it, because I think bisexual, while it was still fitting, I think that it left out trans people, in my opinion. A lot of bi people say that they include trans people in that. I just feel like bi definitely means two. And so I like poly. It's more fitting. I have dated like 3 female to male people in my lifetime. So I clearly like had no issue with that. And so I felt like bisexual just didn't fit. And so again, I felt like I didn't fit in with this group that I was supposed to find my belonging in. And so for a while, then I just decided queer was good because it was a big, you know, umbrella. I didn't have to explain myself like, oh, I'm just queer. Like, but don't ask me, I don't know.
Yes, the thing is that queer used to have like a negative meaning.
Extremely,
yes,
extremely negative. And that's another thing, like with my handle. My goal is to make the word queer unite us. Like, all of us in the LGBTQ plus IA, whatever, all of us fit under queer. Every single one of us are considered different from the normal hetero path. And I think that like when I didn't know where I fit, it made me feel like I at least belonged to a whole group. Mm-hmm. And so for a while it was queer, and that was fine. But again, like you said, like my mom was like, whoa, are you like cool with that? And I was like, mm-hmm. Yeah, like, and I think that it's a great descriptive word as long as you're in the community. Like, I mean, I also think that like for the longest time, the negative connotation that got put with it is so sad. Like queer literally just means different. Like I want to say in Latin, it's like something to do with like out of the normal or whatever, but it shouldn't be such a dirty word. It's been made a dirty word. And so
yeah, I agree with that. But even I mean in Greece, if you call like someone, you know, a lesbian, people are like, they get like weird even with that, which that's weird that they've made it into something weird, you know what I mean?
Yes, right? It's weird that they made it weird.
Yes, because but
why you gonna make shit weird?
Yes, exactly. Why you making things weird? Like, but the thing is that, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's just a word, and at the end of the day, you just need to be happy with how you are and with who you are. And
right,
I feel we you know, we stick at, instead of seeing the bigger picture, you know, we stay in those little tiny things which are not important. I mean, I get they have a, you know, you need to change things to the better. We don't need to go backwards. But at the same time, there's so many other things that we need to actually change, and that people need to. I mean, I actually had this conversation today. People don't even know what Pride Month is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pride Month.
We start with the
Pride Month was a riot.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
It was a riot started by trans Black women. They literally stood up for us when nobody else did. They dominated Stonewall. And if we didn't have the queer Black community, we wouldn't have the pride that we have today at all. And so when people like think of pride as us just trying to get attention, yes. I always want to remind people like, no, we're not asking for attention. We're celebrating how far we've come. Mm. We're celebrating the fact that we can get together on the streets and we're safe. Mm-hmm. We're celebrating the fact that we can get together on the streets and find camaraderie and communion and family in our own community. And that's something that straight people do every day. It's something that Christians do every day. It's part of living a healthy life is having that fellowship and that relationship with people like you. And pride is supposed to bring us together. And it's not a look at me. Wow, don't get me wrong, us gays do love some attention. But that's not what it's about. It's about saying that we have equal rights. If we want to have a bar with drag queens and lesbians in suits, then let us have a bar with drag queens and lesbians in suits. We have the same rights as every other human. And I hope that people look into Stonewall and it becomes more synonymous with pride, because there's so much more to it than the rainbow flags and the glitter. Yes, for sure. And the drinking and that's the outside stuff. But on the inside, it means so much more. And just like finding like your identity, being able to like fit in somewhere, like pride gives you that month to find your crew in like a safe way, you know? Yes. And it could be extremely dark when you don't feel like you have a place where you fit in. And I know that was really hard for me because like, especially in high school when I knew I was bisexual, but anytime it was brought up, like it was made to be this sexualized thing. Like, I couldn't just tell a friend, like, I like women and men. Like, no, it was, oh, you want to go like kiss girls at parties in front of dudes for attention. And I'm like,
Okay.
no, I want to like steal the girl on my softball team and go behind a dugout. Like, or different things. Yeah. And so I think that I listened to those, you know, and I believe that I was like dirty or, you know, like doing it for attention. Cause again, us gays and our attention. I do love me some attention. I'm not going to lie. And so it was very hard for me to separate, like when I was seeking attention and if they were right to when I was seeking a relationship and camaraderie. And I got it twisted in my head for a while that like I couldn't find that fellowship and that camaraderie without being called like a tease or a slut, or it was constantly this negative connotation. And that's also something that I feel for the bisexual community, because it was something that I know affected me a lot when I identified as bisexual. It just felt dirty, and I hated that that was my assimilation, but that was what I was made to believe by my peers and my community whenever I did talk about my sexuality. And so it took a while. I'd say I was divorced at like 24, 23. I had Addie at 21. I would say like by the time I was 21 or 22, that like I just like I was no longer worried about what it looked like to anybody else, because I was so done being unhappy. Yes. That I just had to take control of my life. Like the self-harming ended finally, and like I've had a couple relapses, but nothing that wasn't like triggered, you know. But it was just, you know, a really anxious part of my life that I had no control over. I felt like everybody was just kind of like planning my life for me, and I was just doing what I was supposed to do. I joined the military because that's what I was supposed to do. I married a military guy because I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I traveled with him and put, you know, my career on hold, and that's what I felt like I was supposed to do. Yes. So but it was.
Okay, so obviously you said that you knew since early age, but did you have were your parents supported like in general from like a very young age when you
actually okay, so I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay.
So it's me, I'm the oldest, and then Bailey. She's 18 months younger than me, so she's 26. She just had a baby.
Okay. Yes. Oh yeah, I saw the picture.
Yes, little Riley. And then I have my brother Carson. He's 21. Mm-hmm. And I have my baby sister Mia, who's 14. So okay. Yeah. So my little brother Carson, the only boy of the family, he came out when he was 5. Yeah, and he was like, Mom, like Troy Bolton on a High School Musical is so hot, and I think I really like him. And my mom was like, yeah, he's really cool. I like him too. And my brother's like, no, Mom, like I think I really like him. And my mom was like, well, that's okay. Like if you like boys, that's totally fine. Sometimes girls like girls and sometimes boys like boys. You're just too young to know that yet. So talk to me when you're older. So freshman year of high school rolls around, and he came out again, and he'd already come out to like his friends in middle school and stuff. So it wasn't like a complete shock, but my brother is not necessarily like feminine in any way. He's just, he's very sensitive, like almost like his personality just has so much empathy for others. And he was also such an anxious little guy that like, it just all made sense to me when he came out. Like, yeah, we knew. My whole family knew. And my dad's brother is gay. And his cousin on that side is gay. Like, it definitely, like, isn't out of the norm for my family in any way. And so I think that's also was helpful, is that, you know, the family members before me that came out, including my brother. So
yeah, but you were the first one to come out. So
no, he was the first one to come out.
but he was, yeah, but like, you know, when they're like really young, you say,
No, so in high school, no, I guess it was, yeah, freshman year of high school. So I was already out as like bi, but I was engaged to a man at that point. So like I hadn't fully like come out to my parents. They just knew that I liked chicks too. Like,
yeah,
I had never like, they didn't know that I had openly dated a girl at that point, but they knew that I like was hanging out with a girl that I liked, and it was that girl who's now a dude, which is one of my people that was a transition. Yeah, so that was another reason why it just felt better to be pansexual. But so once I got a divorce or whatever, and I was dating a guy for a bit, and then I started dating this girl the one I dated for like 4 months, Paige. She was great. I was just like, so hey, I'm dating somebody, and her name is Paige. And my parents were like, oh, her? And I was like, yeah, her. Can she come on the boat next week? my parents are like, well, yeah, if she's your girlfriend, she absolutely needs to come on the boat next week so we can meet her. And so that was like my coming out, you know, like my official. I mean, again, they knew that I had hooked up with girls and liked women, and I make comment about people on TV all the time. So it wasn't a super shock.
Usually they kind of probably know from, you know, when you're like early ages, but I think a lot of parents are in denial, and that what just makes it worse.
Agreed. It does. It makes it harder on the parent and the kid.
Yes, for sure.
Right.
And I was reading an article before we start the live,
Mm-hmm.
that was actually saying that in general, people from the youth of LGBT community have 5% more, they're more likely for suicides.
Yeah.
And if they're rejected from their parents, because obviously we've heard a lot of stories like that, it goes up like 4%, like it's 8.
Yeah.
Yes. So even though we live in this time and age, I feel that's still a thing. I mean, I don't know about the US, but in Greece for sure. I would tell you that.
It's the same, sadly.
The same.
Yeah. Parents will just be like, they'll know, like they have to know that like their child is with somebody and is gay, but they'll just pretend like they don't see it. They're just friends. Like, whatever makes it easier, you know, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. You're the expert, but
it does not make it easier in the long run, in my expert opinion.
I think it just, what I read, because I had uploaded this, and I've read it a lot of the times, it's that, you know, if you're going to have a child, you need to accept it, no matter, you know, maybe you are thinking, and I'm not just saying about being gay, okay, maybe you want your daughter to be a lawyer, and then she ends up hating to become that, and she wants to become, I don't know, a fitness instructor.
Right.
You know, you can't hate your child for what they want and what they like. But
well, and by pushing them in a different direction, you just push them away. Period. I mean, instead of just accepting them and watching their path and supporting them in whatever direction they go, the moment that you push your child in a direction, it distances you. Yes, you're pushing them in a direction, but you're also pushing them away from you. It is not a healthy type of relationship. And like me, when I was doing what I thought I wanted my dad, when I was doing what I thought my dad wanted me to do, I was at like my unhappiest. And it was hard for me to like stop doing all that and just focus on, you know, push them away, make them unhappy. No sense.
Yeah. That doesn't make no sense. Exactly. Because you're supposed to have your children happy, no matter what. But I get like that, you know, it's what society wants you to do. Or
Oh, I see what they're saying. Like when you push them away, it makes them unhappy. Like it makes no sense. Exactly. Agreed. Yeah. I see what you're saying. When you, it took me a second. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like pushing your child down this path is just going to make them unhappy. It's going to make your relationship unhappy. Like it's not going to work out for either people. It's just going to destroy the relationship. Yeah.
What I hear also about Pride Month is that if you want to be considered, let's say, normal, like straight people, what's the point of doing the Pride? Because you don't see straight people doing a Pride for straight. Like, what are you? I'm hearing. Tell me your views. I love that face. It's like anger.
Yes. So do we celebrate veterans? Yes.
Yes.
Right?
I was like, I got a bit confused. I was like, we do.
Yeah, we do, right?
Yes.
So that's a small group that we celebrate. Do we celebrate like African American Heritage Month?
We do.
Yes, we do. Black History Month. We have Indigenous People Month. I think that's going on right now. We have Pacific Islander and Asian Month. Like these things are in place because they are a minority group. And in that minority group, they want to find their community. And within that, it brings education to the normal people. So, normal people don't understand because they've never been on that minority group. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that it's usually white men or white women that are bitching about it. And what's crazy to me is that they don't understand that we get this like month because of all of the shit we've gone through. Like it's to bring awareness to the hate and the trials and tribulations that a small group has had, whether that be the color of your skin or your sexual orientation. People want to find their community, and that's what Pride is about. It's about celebrating the Black trans woman Marsha P. Johnson that threw a frickin' brick and said fuck off. Like, we are here because of women, men, humans, mm-hmm. that we have to acknowledge and like at least thank, you know? And other people may look at Pride Month and be like, oh, it's just, you know, a big celebration of gayness that they want to throw in everybody's face. But for us, it is victories. It's small victories. We're celebrating the fact that we can walk down the street in most places holding hands and not be hit in the face because we're holding somebody's hand that's the same sex as us. We're celebrating the fact that 10 years ago, I couldn't marry my wife in America. I mean, there's a lot people, I mean, just in the late 90s, 98, I think, somebody was jailed for homosexual tendencies in Texas. Like, yeah.
Why is it always Texas over there?
Texas, we don't claim them all the time.
Okay.
I apologize for Texas. They actually would appreciate if they just separated from us. And at this point, let them.
Because whenever I hear something like really bad or something, or like, as you're saying, like, I don't know, someone, beat someone up because they're gay, or let's say something like that. It's always someone from Texas, or it's either, or the person's from Texas. Like,
well, the problem is the Texas is the good old boy state. So it's just constantly been allowed. It's constantly like they don't follow the laws of America. They make their own laws of the state. And they believe that the whole point of us leaving Europe and coming to America is so that we didn't have somebody controlling us like a government or telling us what to do. And so while I understand the idea of it, like they want their land and their guns and they want, like, don't tell me what the fuck to do. I get that part of being a Republican. I get that they don't want the government in their fucking business.
Mhm.
I get that. However, there comes a time where like being just a good fucking human with like basic respect for other humans comes into play, where if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't fucking say shit. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I know mama taught you better than that. Like, come on.
You see, that's my other problem. I mean, we won't go into it because this is a very, it's okay. We shouldn't touch on topics like this because I never do. But about religion, because the part that I don't understand is this, and I will leave it there. Is the whole thing about religion is loving other people in general, no matter what. Okay.
Right. No matter what, all monotheistic religions believe that you should love thy neighbor.
Exactly. So why the problem is because in general in Greece there.
I'm sorry. Continue.
I don't know, but in Greece people are
like,
really religious, and I respect them. I'm like, okay, yes, you can. Everyone believes what they believe, but when you reject your child because of your religion, you hear stories as such,
all
and
the time.
I know people that have been through that, and I find that awful. Like
it just doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense, because if your child, as a mom, this is how I feel. Mm-hmm. If your child is physically healthy, happy, with a roof over their head and food in their mouths, everything else just doesn't fucking matter. Like, as a parent, if those basic necessities are taken care of, then what your child does with their life is their life. And that's something that, of course, I only have a 5-year-old, so I can't speak to as she becomes an adult yet. But I know in my heart that if she was physically healthy, mentally healthy, and doing what she loves, that's all I could ever fucking ask for. And the problem is people are more worried about what other people will think about them and not what their children think about them.
Yeah, that's true.
And people forget that children become adults. And that cycle will eventually be called out.
Yes, but I think, and that's the other thing about Pride. It's that, yes, it's to honor what happened many years back. No, well, not that many, but with Stonewall. But at the same time, is situations like that because people are rejected by the family, and then it's what you're saying is finding that community and finding other people, because if you only just got the Pride, you're gonna find millions of people to speak to,
right?
And it's building that and having, I mean, at the end of the day, it's something so positive because you're getting people to not feel alone.
Yes, it's just that community, the sense of I'm not the only person like this.
Yes, and as you said, and especially, I mean, obviously things are much better nowadays. Like, I don't know her name. She's a YouTuber. She has a... Your daughter must know her. What is your daughter?
Jojo Siwa.
Yes, that's one.
My daughter's bedroom is all Jojo Siwa. She loves her. And she loved her before she came out. So, like, she has, like, JoJo shoes and JoJo t-shirts. Her bed is JoJo. Her chair is JoJo. Her towels are JoJo.
Oh, my God.
My girl loves her some JoJo. And when she came out, it was, like, it was so cool to have my daughter's superhero and, like, the person she looks at be, like, her mom. Like,
yes, that turned out real good.
It did. It turned out really good for me.
Yeah, so yeah, what I want to say about that is that obviously years back, not many years, but I'm saying even when we were growing up, you wouldn't
What's up,
have.
Addie? Come here. I can see her looking at the door. What's up, sis? What's up? You can come say hi.
Yeah, we're talking about, what's her name? Jojo.
We're talking about Jojo Siwa. Do you love Jojo Siwa?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's the same with her, that many years back you probably wouldn't have a singer, a YouTuber, an actor, anything.
Well, and like she's on Nickelodeon. And so Nickelodeon put out like a happy Pride Month with her and like rituals and stuff. And to know that that's like my child's cartoon shows like have gay characters, and it's just little things that like
make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, she's gonna grow up feeling like this is normal. Not just her normal, it's normal.
But yes. So like, yeah, but yes, that's the thing, that you can at least see things changing, because we didn't have that years back. I don't think, I mean, I never remember seeing on television.
If there was a gay character, it was always a man.
Actually, yes, that's true. I didn't notice that.
They're always the gay guys. They never have gay girls. So annoying.
Yeah, I think it's because there's been this thing that, you know, when it's girl, like two girls, it's more sexualized.
Right, like it's like the whole bisexual thing. It's like dirty.
Yes, it's like it would always turn out to be, you know, a scene, as you know, just to bring more attention. Like if it's a action movie, let's say, which probably a guy would watch.
Right.
It probably would be something like that.
Right, for sure.
Like it would never be something serious.
It would never be realistic. It would
be
sexual.
Exactly.
All right, mommy's almost done. We only have like 10 more minutes, okay? What are you gonna do? I don't know. We'll find out.
What are you gonna do?
She's like, entertain me, Mom. We can watch a movie together.
There you go.
We already went to the splash pad today.
I saw it. That looked.
Yes. It was a lot of fun. Her school goes there, so she was like, Mom, I gotta show you this place. Huh.
Yeah. Can I ask you, like, about your daughter, like in general, how she is with all? I'm guessing she has no issue, because, as we said, children don't mind or don't even notice.
Yeah. So when I first started dating women, like she was one.
Yes.
Like, so it's always definitely been her normal. But yeah, I also think that like living in Louisville, it's very, very LGBTQ friendly. Okay. So she has other kids that she goes to school with that have parents that are the same sex.
Oh,
and
wow. All right.
Yeah. And we live in like the part of Louisville in the Highlands where like the gay community is. So, I mean, even when it's not June, you walk up and down our street and there's pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags. And we constantly have rainbows up around our entire area of the city. So I think, honestly, she's going to be blessed to grow up here, and when she goes to other places that like are not as accepting, I think she's going to be shocked.
Probably, yeah. Tell her to go to Greece.
Right? No kidding. That would be a culture shock.
We're getting there.
That's I lived in Europe whenever Greece had like that collapse around like, what was it, 2016 or whatever, when the economy freaked out. Fun. Yes, yeah. And I was living in Europe and I was about to go to Greece and then we couldn't go. I was so sad.
To go. You would love.
I know.
I don't know how much. Well, we're getting there with the gay community, like LGBT and all that. But I feel there's still such a long way to go with Greece.
Yeah.
Like if you went, for example, with your wife, and you went like, I don't know, even if it's mainland or if it's an island and you kissed, probably like a lot of people that are older would like, would
Right.
say something
It
to you.
It would be very taboo.
Yes, it's like, oh my God, Berka, like, like not that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for today.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
We're gonna have to do it again because I got so much more to talk about.
Yes, we just covered the basic, but we had to because it's Pride Month. But yes, you need to give us sexual education, sex ed.
That's next.
To give us the mental aspect of stuff. So we would definitely, I would definitely book you in for.
We'll get into relationships and sex next.
Yes, I know. I think we need to make people feel uncomfortable. Like that.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Yes, so we definitely have to do it. But that's the thing, that sex in general, it's such a, like, people get like, uncomfortable and everything when it's something that's so natural. So
like it's so normal. I know. It's so normal and we make it so taboo. It's like, and even like Europeans, y'all, like, you're more open than we are. For some reason, we make it like very weird. Like, okay, boobs, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah, in Europe, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, if a girl has her boobs out, or like she's breastfeeding, or like a kid's running around without her t-shirt at a park, like in Europe, people don't care. That's normal.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, it's very normal, right? In America, they'd be like, why are you letting your 4-year-old run around without a t-shirt? Like, you need to put clothes on her. Like, they sexualize everything. And so it's really, like, Europe is definitely, they've come a lot further than America when it comes to, like, they just make everything dirty. We make everything dirty.
Yeah, no, I think though also, I feel that we have in general the US as this, they are so open to everything and liberal and all that, but in general, but then it's not.
Right? It's not.
I don't know, but from the things that you're telling me,
I feel like that's LA. And like, I feel like people, when they think of America, they think of like LA and New York, and the majority of America, the majority of America is not like LA people or New York people.
Yes, I guess so. But it's what you say, that we always, when someone says America, it's the American dream of Los Angeles or New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But,
you forget all those weird states in between that don't get talked about.
They don't exist. They don't exist.
They don't exist. It's just Texas, California, New York.
Yes, so we would definitely book another live together.
Yes, we'll do our next live.
The main person on Face the Elephant. You are the therapist. You're like everything,
I'm gonna give it. I got it all.
You're the queen.
I try.
Thank you so much for today.
Of course. If I'm the queen, that makes you the princess, right?
Yeah,
you're my princess. Well, thank you for having me. This was fun. We're gonna do it again, guys. Don't you worry.
We will. You need to stay tuned.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Make sure you save it so that I can post it too.
For sure. I definitely will. You too have a lovely evening.
Say thank you. You too. Say peace out. Bye.
Bye.